Ooh, hey, everybody. Welcome in. John Eads here with you, and I'm joined by a colleague and friend of mine here, Glen West. He works for Go 24/7. You've probably read a lot of his things over the past 6 years or so.
There's been a lot of them. There's been a lot of things that we've written about over the last 6 years, that's for sure. But no, I appreciate you having me on. Thanks for having me. I was a little worried. I wasn't sure if I was going to fit in this studio because I am up there in size. Yeah. But we're sitting here now and everything's good. So I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I just told Wade, who's running the board for us here, that you're the tallest reporter in town. And then you said you might be the tallest ever.
It might be.
You're probably right. You know,
I'm sure there's a former basketball player out there who's got me beat. But from just a pure journalism degree standpoint, I can't imagine there are many that are taller than me. So
our old sports director, Steve Snyder, he was pretty tall. Do you have
6'4",
him?
6'5". Yeah, I think I've got him beat
by a little bit.
I'm about 6'10", so my Twitter handle is your average 6'10" guy. So
is it?
Yeah, that's what I like to go by. So
good pick.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Who would know the answer to that? I think is Kent Lowe.
Kent Lowe would absolutely know the answer to that.
Maybe we should ask him.
That's the GOAT, man. Yeah. That's my guy right there. I love Kent. Yeah, it's a great guy.
I saw that video yesterday when McMahon said, "Hey, Kent, you're 38, all that stuff," and then Bonnet had made a video of one shining moment of
that was about
Kent
4 years ago.
I wasn't here yet, so I didn't know about this.
I pulled it from the archives, but it's one of their greatest content creations, I think, since I've been here at least. Yeah. They had a great video crew back in the 2020, 2019, 2021 age, and they put together that little thing for Kent. But he's awesome. Bonnet's awesome. Bill Franquez, who we know covers baseball. All those guys are really great, and they do a phenomenal job of keeping us in line, but also showing us where to go.
Mm-hmm. It is actually, I think, National SID Day today as a recording.
Yeah, exactly.
Works out perfectly.
Way to bring it up. Yeah.
And speaking of hoops, we'll get into that in a little bit. I'm thinking Glenn writes about everything: football, basketball, baseball.
Recruiting, everything. Yeah, I do a little bit of all of it. So, yeah.
I'm thinking we just kind of generally attack each of these topics. They're all kind of in different spots. I mean, baseball is creme de la crop right now. Basketball is just starting and jury's still out. And then football is kind of in I don't want to say it's a disaster right now, but it's definitely
I'm interested to hear
chaotic.
I was interested to hear your description for football right now. It's definitely been one of the wilder 2-week stretches that I can ever recall, working here and certainly talking with a bunch of the guys who have been around for even a lot longer than I have, the Michael Cobbles, the Scott Rabelais, the Jacques Doucets of the world, who've been here for 25, 30 years. They think it's one of the craziest, stretches that they've ever been a part of from an LSU athletic standpoint too. So certainly a lot to dive into.
Yeah, I don't think there's been a time period in which you've had there's been fired coaches over the years, but a new president get hired, an AD get fired, another get hired, then unhired, then rehired, if that makes any sense. Am I missing anything? The OC was fired.
The governor had some very interesting comments last week. You have, you finally got your interim head coach settled with Frank Wilson doing some good things. And, it's I just want to kind of skip to February, March, and kind of get into baseball season a little bit. But we've got a lot of things that are going to kind of unfold here over the next several weeks and months, and I'm excited for it.
I don't know if you heard, but LSU plays Alabama in football on Saturday.
Yeah.
And that's kind of getting swept under the rug.
Story. Yeah, that's maybe story number 5 for us on our site today. So,
let's kind of get into this football thing. I'm not sure how much people really even care about what they do the rest of the season. And in the past 3 years, the 3 that I've been here at least, have all been kind of similar. We get to November, and we're going to player interviews, and it's like, what is interesting to talk about right now? This team already has 3 losses or 2, and they're about to get their 3rd in the first week in November. And by then, the season's over. It's just like Novembers around here have been so dull in recent years.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And I think, just to your perspective on, what they have to play for, I think from a player perspective, it's hard not to go individualized, right? Is what can I do here over the next month as opposed to what the team can accomplish over the next month? And I think that's a little bit of what Frank Wilson and this staff have maybe been fighting or trying to convey to these players. These guys, if they stick together and play as a team, I still think they have a lot of talent. And I think that they can, surprise some folks here down the final 4 games of their season. But, you've got guys who are going to be playing for future opportunities in the transfer portal. You've got guys who are going to be playing for future NFL opportunities, and guys who might want to stick around for next year, who are going to try to, give some good film here over the next 4 games from a, just a evaluation standpoint for next year's roster. So I still think there's something to play for here for this group. Look, when you come into this season and you're playoff or bust and you bust out before November, it's a massive failure. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of the repercussions of what's happened here over the last couple of weeks. But from a player standpoint, I think all these guys, the ones that we've talked to at least this week, I think you were there on Tuesday, like they're keeping their heads down. I think they're keeping their focus on, one game at a time and doing the most with the opportunities that they have left.
Yeah, I liked what all of them said. They seem bought in still, and they've changed some things up in practice. They're doing more physical drills. They're doing 9-on-7 running drills and the Tiger Bowl and a whole bunch of other stuff that
the rally
we probably
call
don't hear
for
about.
Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
That was an interesting kind of twist. The fourth quarter and
the drum.
Fourth quarter finish. I think that's what they like to pump in there. The drum is another added bonus that we saw on Tuesday. So, look, I think another angle to this, too, is that the players love Frank Wilson. Like, a lot of these guys are Louisiana recruits. They're guys that Frank knows. He knows their families. He knows them very personally. And I think there's an element of wanting to play for him here over the last final month of this season as well. And, if they stick together as a team, I think, they can certainly be competitive over the final 4 games and I think have some really bright moments.
Usually in college football, and I don't know why it works this way, but teams that have an interim head coach always seem to play better. Like, when I'm doing spreads and stuff for fun and I'm looking at betting lines and I see a team that just fired a coach or something like that, an OC, immediately hit them as an underdog because they cover every time. They play good competitive ball. Like this year, I'm thinking like Virginia Tech. Yeah, they've won a couple games.
It's a good mental reset. Decent. Last week, Florida took Georgia to like
they probably should have won that
final
game.
Fourth quarter. Like I mean, like they you can be competitive if you get that mental reset, and I think that's what it. At least to us, and at least the message that the players are conveying, that sounds like what they've been able to accomplish here over the last couple of weeks, which is nice.
What I'm fascinated to see is how much better does this team play with these changes? With Alex Atkins calling the plays, is the offense more cohesive? I guess with Brian Kelly's just presence not there, do the players just play better for one reason or another?
Yeah. I think there's something to that. Look, I think when you go back and you watch the Texas A&M game, there was just so much shouting on the sidelines, right? Yeah. There was so much, it just looked like negativity on the sidelines. And maybe that, that reset here that they've kind of undertaken can be a little bit of a boost for the players and for the coaching staff as well. Because, these coaches are also, they're how they perform over this final month of the season. It could be whether or not they stick on with this staff or if they go find another job with another staff somewhere. So I think from a play calling perspective offensively, what I'm looking for and what Frank Wilson has alluded to in multiple press conferences is just hammering home the run game. Like they feel like that they are starting to turn a corner there, and I think a big reason for that is Harlan Berry, the 5-star freshman. He's averaging, I think when he gets 6 or 7 carries a game or more, he's averaging 5.5 yards a carry, and he scored 2 or 3 touchdowns in that time span. Like, I think they're going to really lean into him. I think they're going to continue to lean into Trey'Dez, who's been on just an absolute heater the last 3 games in the past game. And then, you can work in Harlan Berry, or you can work in Caden Durham, you can work in Juwan Johnson and other guys like that. But I think from an offensive play calling perspective, sticking with the run and not abandoning it is going to be a big theme here over the next 4 games. And I think you'll see some, pretty even from a play calling perspective between the run and the pass as a result. Yeah,
they've said it over and over again, like, we're going to run the ball, make no mistake about it. And they've also floated the idea of getting Michael Van Buren involved. Yeah. Obviously, this is Garrett Nussmeier's last season. No matter what, he's exhausted all of his eligibility, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So I'm curious to see how they work Van Buren in and how he looks, because he's been in for mop-up duty and then a little bit late there against A&M. I think that's it, right?
Yeah, he played the final series or 2 against A&M, led a touchdown drive in the fourth quarter when, it was already way out of reach. But, look, I'm excited about Van Buren because when we watched in the fall, and I think you can attest to this too, being out there, he didn't really stick out to us a whole ton. He or Colin Hurley in those practice sessions. And when it's gotten to game time, he's looked really, really good. He's looked like a different quarterback in a lot of ways. And so I'm excited to see how they work him in. I have a tough time seeing him on the field, 10 times this weekend against Alabama, for example. But if they can work him in on a 3rd and short, if they're down by the goal line and they feel like they have a good run play to where he can have the option to run or to hand it off or to pitch it to somebody, just be a little bit more creative with the offense. I would certainly be leaning into that if I were LSU, because he's somebody that you also want to see back on this roster next year too. And I know that there's going to be a massive exodus with a lot of these players in all likelihood, and so having some kind of stability with some younger players, I think, is going to be really important. And I think Van Buren is firmly a guy that you'd want to see back on this team next year.
I think so. He's got some intangible traits.
Yeah,
and
he's still young too. He's a second-year player, so
he's got plenty of years still ahead of him. And LSU's kind of in an interesting spot here. They got 4 games left. You'll play Bama, their top 5. Oklahoma's top 15, if I'm not mistaken, thereabouts or so. And you got Arkansas, Western Kentucky. You have a chance to play spoiler, more so with Oklahoma probably than Alabama, because perhaps if Oklahoma wins out, that might be an elimination type game for them if they can't beat LSU. So you should just let it all hang loose, Bring Van Buren in and run like a jump pass, work up some trick plays. Just have some fun because nobody's really expecting you to go 4-0, and I'm not sure it'll even matter anyway if Frank Wilson's playing for the job and stuff and things like that. So just go into all of these games and just say, let's go.
Throw it all at the wall.
Let's do it all.
Throw it all at the wall. I think that's a really good point, and something that you certainly would love to see as a fan too. Like, to be creative. This offense, I think, so much this season has just been kind of bogged down by a lot of different circumstances, whether it's the poor offensive line play or the Nussmeier abdomen injury early in the season, where they just were not able to be explosive down the field in any respect, and the run game never being able to get off the ground. Like the creativity, I think, has been called into question a lot over the first 7-8 games, and so throwing guys like Van Buren in there, giving him opportunities, continuing to lean into some of your younger guys. Carius Kern on the offensive line is another player who I think we'll continue to see start, and I think is probable for this game going up to Alabama. So he could certainly be at left tackle for you. And I think there's a lot that you can still learn about the current roster, especially with some of the younger players that you're hoping are back next year. And I'm excited to see what they roll out. And Van Buren's going to be right at the heart of that for sure.
And Nussmeier too. He's got a chance here to put some good tape out for the last 4. I don't know what has been the issue this year, but he throws for 4K last year, and a lot of people are like, all right, 1st-round pick, maybe he'll go to the Saints. And now I don't even know if he would get drafted the seasons that he's had this year, man.
It's been a rough season for him. I mean, I'm with you. I thought for sure he'd be taking a next step this year, and I think in hindsight, looking back on it, the 4 offensive linemen being drafted, we knew it was going to be a weakness for LSU. I didn't think it'd be this big of a weakness. And the one thing you can say about last year's team is that those guys were excellent pass protectors. Like, Nussmeier was really able to kind of sit into the pocket and have some fun and get the ball out to some really explosive receivers last year. And they just haven't had that same timing, that same rhythm, I don't think, has been there either between Nuss and the wide receivers. I'm not sure why that is, but he's definitely not been the guy that they have needed this year. But I think there's, like you mentioned, there's opportunity here for him as he's gotten healthier. And I do think he's gotten healthier and played better these last couple games. But the protection just hasn't been there for him to really kind of get the ball out the way that he needs to. If that can kind of start to turn around a little bit and he puts up some good film, I think he can still work his way into being a day 2 kind of guy. Like, he's got the arm talent. I think he's a smart player for the most part. He makes some weird decisions sometimes with the football, but he also can make some really incredible throws that NFL teams certainly noticed last year, and I don't think you just lose that over the course of an offseason as a quarterback.
It's been there at times this year too, so we'll see on that.
Yeah.
And then defensively, I kind of like the matchup here, to be honest with you. Ty Simpson has some mobility, but he's not a Marcel Reed or one of the Diego Pavia. He's not going to run for 50 yards and a touchdown if he gets some open grass. Obviously, Ryan Williams, Jeremy Bernard, difficult to cover. But the LSU passing defense, I would say, has been pretty solid this year.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, that's been the most improved group. And you look at the secondary between the corners and the safeties, that is the creme de la creme, I think, of this entire roster this year in terms of what LSU was hoping they would get from that group going into the season. They've gotten it, and I think, and then some. I think you've seen maybe a little bit of slippage the last week or two with some of the explosive receivers they face, but I think a lot of that also is because these mobile quarterbacks they've played have just been able to extend plays, and when you're able to extend plays, you're able to keep the receivers on the field for a longer time, and it's just a lot of catch up that you got to do as a defensive back as a result. So I'm excited about this matchup because I think you're right. Simpson's not a guy that's going to be looking to run a whole ton this weekend. I think he's going to be somebody that is looking to pass more often than not, and I think one of his greatest strengths as a quarterback is just being able to maneuver the pocket, and his processing ability I think is really up there for a first-year starter at least. And so what that means for the secondary is, if those guys up front are not going to be able to get the home as consistently as maybe they need to, they're going to need to really step up against some really explosive receivers like you mentioned in Bernard and Williams. So I think this is a big matchup. We talked to Delane on Tuesday, and he is somebody that is very opinionated and is embracing this matchup, and I think is ready for it. And you got DJ Pickett, PJ Woodland, who are young players that you hope are on the roster next year too. So it's going to be a fun one for sure, I think, from a secondary standpoint and how they stack up with this Alabama passing game.
I think they got a real shot. I think the line right now is at about 10, 9.5,
I think it was 10
thereabouts.
this morning when I looked at it, yeah.
Which I don't like. I was hoping to be a little more inflated, because I do see it being kind of a 7 to 10 point game. But
yeah.
I don't know. I just this belief in the interim coaches and playing better.
I think there's something to it.
There's
man.
a lot of talent on this team. They just haven't been able to tap into it,
Yeah, so. I think there's something to that. And, we'll see what happens from a front seven perspective. I think a big key to this game is going to be, can they get to him a little bit? Can they get to Simpson a little bit and make him throw a little bit more uncomfortably in the pocket than maybe he's been used to this year? And but, the other thing about Bama is they don't have a great run game. I mean, They're a lot like LSU in the fact that they have, I think, so much of their offense is going to be predicated on the pass game. And so that could certainly leave some opportunities for LSU to get back there and create some negative plays.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Off a bye, too, so 2 weeks to game plan. And
it doesn't hurt.
You mentioned Frank Wilson. It really seems like they've all kind of molded together in this kind of crazy time, and they're ready to let it rip for 4 games starting in Tuscaloosa. So you'll be making your way over there.
Yeah, we'll be heading up on Friday and staying in Meridian, which is kind of the media hub. I think it's about 90 miles outside of Tuscaloosa, and then you make the drive in on Saturday. So I'm excited. I've been there a couple times. It's a really cool environment for the most part, and I'm excited to see how this team responds, especially here over the next month in completion of the season.
I'm expecting some inspired football, so we'll see how it goes. Relating to the off the field football things, and then we'll switch into basketball. What do you think about this coaching vacancy? Like, I've had people ask me many times over the past few weeks what I think, who it's going to be, and I really don't know. There's so many jobs open right now, and it's just, I'm hearing things about Saban and Kiffin. I have no idea.
Well, the Saban one was squashed pretty quickly, and I think that was going to be I think the one team, if he was ever going to get back into coaching, would have been the one team he would have listened to outside of Alabama would have been LSU, because I do think he really loves this place, and he's talked openly about how that was the one regret that he's had in his coaching career, but that never got off the ground. Osbury, came out earlier this week and pretty much squashed that on our local radio show here, 104.5 ESPN. But look, from my perspective, I am in the same boat as you. Like, I just, you hear so many different things about the way that this could go, and I think the first thing that LSU just has to do is they have to get organized. Like, that's the thing from leadership, from the top to from the president, Wade Roos, who was announced earlier this week, to Verge and to the search committee that's going to be leading the charge of this next coaching search. They just all have to get in a room together and talk about this process and talk about how they're going to go about doing this over the next several weeks, because there's going to be a lot of coaching candidates that look at these last couple weeks and are going to have a lot of questions. And certainly if they don't, their agents are. And so I think it's really important for those guys to have some kind of structure, to have alignment as you go into these conversations, as you go into these meetings. I'm sure they're already taking calls on coaches and trying to get in the lay of the land of who's interested, who's not, and going from there. But I to be honest, I don't know about names even, like, right now. I mean, you can have your theories, you can have your perspective on things, but I mean, the most popular one out there, for example, is Lane Kiffin, right? Lane could be playing well into January here, and so you have to balance whether or not you're going to put all your eggs in that basket, or if you have to prioritize and shift your focus elsewhere in the short term. And so there's so much that's going to have to. There's so many layers that are going to have to come with this. And I think the first step here is, now that they have some announced alignment, Verge, as soon as 15, 20 minutes ago, and I was checking my phone. He's on his athletic profile page. He's listed as the director of athletics, and so that's one thing that you have solved now. And now the next step here is you have your president, you have your search committee, getting those guys in the room and just laying out a plan that you can attack when you have these conversations with all these interested candidates going forward. I think that's the most important first step here.
Yeah, what makes it hard, though, to your point, is this season, if you're going to bring another coach in and he's coaching at a great program, which obviously you're going to bring in a coach that's succeeding where he is now.
Try to swing big for sure.
But you can't really figure that out until their season's over. And in the cases of Missouri, maybe not so much Missouri, but definitely Ole Miss, they're probably going to be playing into the playoff and deep into this year, early next year. And you got that early portal window. Yeah. That's a one-time thing, right? It opens and closes in early January.
In early January.
So you've really got to have your T's crossed and I's dotted at that point so you can start building the roster. Because if you miss out on that portal window,
you're basically punting until the following year, because you're expecting that you're going to lose some guys to the portal, right? And when the season's over, those guys are going to look at their options and look at what the future is and how, if you don't have a coach here, how unsettled it is. I mean, a lot of these guys, NIL is certainly a component to this, right? But you also have relationships with the coaches on the current staff. And, you look at guys like DJ Pickett, who's a 5-star freshman. I'm not saying DJ Pickett's going in the transfer portal, okay? I'm not saying that's going to happen. But he came here in large part because of the development that he was going to get from Corey Raymond. Yeah. And so is Corey going to be on the staff next year? Is that going to be a conversation that the next coach has to have as they're making these decisions? And so there's a lot that goes into that. And if you don't have that coach in place by the time the portal window comes, a lot of these guys could just get scared off and just do it anyway and enter the portal anyway. And then, you have the opportunity to maybe come back for the next coach as well. And once you enter the portal, you are allowed to come back. So I think there's a lot of different angles to this. You got the recruiting window coming up here in December too, where you got the 17-man 2026 class. LSU has done a really great job of not losing any of those guys here over the first couple weeks. We'll see how that evolves here over the course of November. I think there's a lot of ways this can go, but they feel pretty confident. And 11 of those 17 players are Louisiana guys, and they're guys that are recruited by Frank Wilson and by a lot of these coaches that have Louisiana ties. So I don't predict there's going to be a seismic shift, but you certainly could see some attrition with this 2026 recruiting class as well. So lots of things that you have to weigh if you're LSU making this coaching decision. The last couple, Brian Kelly, Ed Orgeron, I believe both of those were announced last week of November, early first week of December. That was kind of the time frame, just November 26th to December 2nd, 3rd range. Yeah. We'll see if they can get that done here, because that's coming up quickly. That's 3 weeks from now, and you better have an idea of what you're going to do if that is the move that you want to make.
Well, it's hard because, like you said before, do you want to wait or do you want to have someone?
Yeah.
Because there's no guarantees Lane would come here. To me, that would kind of be a lateral move. He's built Ole Miss into what will be a college football playoff team, and I don't see any reason why they would plummet off the side of a cliff. No. 2 years ago, he had one of the most expensive rosters in college football, and they almost made the playoff. He finally appears to be getting over the hump this year, and Ole Miss will pay him all the money he wants. So really,
he seems very content where he is. And the one thing I will say to that point is, you start going down that list of head coaches that are, you could feasibly see LSU maybe wanting to attack. Eli Drinkwitz, Kenny Dillingham, Clark Lee at Vanderbilt. I'm just throwing out some names here, but all these guys have pretty stable situations where they're at, and which is why I just come back to the fact that they're just going to have the search committee, their ducks in a row and everything every question that these guys could have, they're going to have answers for them coming into those meetings, or they could have to go further and further down their list as they kind of go through this search.
And I will say this, I feel like the ceiling is higher at LSU than it is at Missouri, than it is at Arizona State. So those coaches maybe understand that. But there's a trade-off there.
Yeah.
If the ceiling's higher, it also means the expectations are higher. Like Kenny Dillingham, they're probably going to go 8-4 maybe at Arizona State this year, and he's nowhere near the hot seat. Like, he took him to the playoff last year, and I think ASU would take 8-4, 9-3 every year.
Yeah,
you know,
I think so.
But if you come here 8-4, 9-3, might get you fired, as Will Campbell said.
They'd be willing to pay the $53 million buyout if that happens. Wow. So that's the.
I don't think they're going to do that again.
Oh no, they won't. I don't think you'll see a 10-year, $95-100 million contract for the next head coach. No, I don't think
anywhere.
I don't think that'll get done. But it's very interesting conversations that are going to have to take place over the next few weeks, and we'll be. I'm sure all of us will be tracking it and following it as closely as possible.
Trying as best we can. You know, there's so many other things going on that they're kind of distracting. You know.
Yeah.
So, last thing on football. Do you think this is the best job available right now? You got Florida, they're open. Auburn's open. Who else is open?
I mean, you've got
there's so many.
Yeah, I mean, where do you start?
VTech's open.
Virginia Tech. You said Florida, right? You said,
yes, Florida.
Arkansas's up there. UCLA.
This is like a video game this year. There's so many open jobs right now. It's
with so much time left in the season too. It's crazy.
Yeah. Michigan State might come open.
Yeah,
that's not really that big. But
yeah, to answer your question, yeah, I do think this is still the best job, because I think the one thing that you look at as a coach is where are my opportunities for success, and outside of just the resources, which I do think LSU has gotten its stuff together in that department, and that they have a lot of resources to go, get the kind of roster that they need to build championship level teams. You have this recruiting hub in Louisiana that just consistently pumps out really good players, and you don't have a whole ton of in-state competition for those players either. And so I think that's a huge feather in the cap for this job. I think certainly the passionate fan base is a part of it. The 100,000 people in Tiger Stadium is a part of it. The SEC glamour, the glitz and glamour that come with being in this conference is a part of it. But for me, if I'm a head coach and I'm coaching elsewhere, and I'm looking and I'm a school in Mississippi or a school in Alabama or a school out in Arizona, there's other schools that are trying to play for those players, right? That are trying to snatch the best in-state talent. And at LSU, you consistently see the top 10 players of Louisiana. A good portion of them go to LSU, and a good portion of them wind up thriving at LSU. And so that I think is a big bonus for LSU as they go into these meetings and conversations. You have this recruiting hub. I think it's a really good job. I think it's the best one that's been opened here so far. And I think if they can just get some alignment, and if they can just have their ducks in a row going into this thing, they should be able to find somebody that they are very pleased with.
All right.
That's my opinion. But we'll see.
It's a good one. Yeah. And you might also have some built-in assistant coaches already if you choose to retain Corey.
That's another great point. And the front office, the front office thing too. Austin Thomas and Kelvin Bolden, all these guys they've brought in that are really good, smart, front office guys. This is building more and more towards an NFL model as we get through college football here, and it's something that I think future coaches will certainly be able to delegate a little bit more, and I think that's having that front office in check is a really good feather in the cap as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's not like a complete rebuild. It's just about finding the right guy, and hopefully that guy's putting in the hours needed and the energy needed to get the best out of the team. So, and we'll leave it at that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's. I know you got to get out of here pretty soon, so let's just touch on basketball a little bit, because that season just started, which I can't believe it snuck up on us.
Yeah, it did. It's a fun team, and I think the way I've described this group is I think they're going to be much more fun to watch. They're going to be better. They're going to be more competitive. But what does that mean come SEC time?
Yeah.
This conference is such a bear. I mean, even this year, the talent from 1 to 16 is you can make a case that 10, 11 of those teams are going to be NCAA tournament teams without really having to do too much digging into their rosters and their teams. But I think LSU has some really interesting pieces. I think they have more size. I think they have more depth. I think they have more athleticism. And I think they should be able to really run through their non-conference schedule pretty seamlessly with the way that it's structured. And it's just the big question to me is how much better is better for this group? Is it going from 3 wins to 6? Is it going from 3 wins to 8? Is it going from 3 wins to 10? I think you have to get in that 8 to 10 conference win range to really feel good about LSU's chances of being a potential NCAA tournament team. And I think that has to be the goal with this group. They poured more resources into this program than they ever have before. They have some really talented players, and now they got to go out there and they got to prove it on the court that they can make some things happen with this staff and with this roster to be a program that's moving forward and not constantly 1 step forward and 3 steps backwards.
I think the team last year did well in non-conference, so they win maybe 11 out of 13 or something like that.
I want to say so. It was 10 or 11, and I think they ended up finishing with only like 14, 15 wins because they went 3-15 in conference play. They didn't have the size, they didn't have the skill to compete in this conference last year, which was unfortunate.
Yeah, so that's where the rubber will really meet the road is, certainly against Texas Tech. That'll be really the first test where we get to see what this team's made of.
SMU, they have a stretch there where it's Texas Tech, SMU. I think DePaul is in there too. That's a good little string of games in the non-conference. It'll really tell us a lot about this team.
Yeah, so kind of like last year, what we're looking for is bare minimum 7, but certainly 8 to 10 to have you feeling good about the NCAA tournament. I will say this, though. Just sitting courtside at the game yesterday for the first half, I was impressed with the tenacity and the intensity they were playing with. It was only game 1. It was Tarleton State. And maybe it was just because it was the first game, everybody's excited and stuff. But guys were diving after loose balls. They just seemed to be treating every possession like it was their last, like they were playing for their season in game 1. McMahon was dialed in, he's picking up a ball when it goes out of bounds. He's slamming it, he's got this look on his face. I kind of like the edge this group has. Like, they got something to prove this year. Like, they want to gain some respect here and around the country.
Absolutely. And we've talked to the players a couple times over the last week, and that's been a pretty constant theme. They're not worried too much about what people are saying about them on the outside. I think they believe that they are going to be a much better team this year. And, Dedan Thomas, I think, is going to be right at the center of that. He is a phenomenal game manager and floor point guard for this team. I mean, it's one that they haven't had in any of the McMahon years coming in this year. He comes out and he goes, I think, for 16-9 or 16-8 last night against Tarleton State, and just was in complete control of the half-court offense and had a really nice supportive performance from Max McKinnon, who's a sharpshooter they got from Portland this year. He's very interesting because he wasn't somebody that I had pegged in as kind of my predictions of their starting lineup. He was somebody I thought could be a really good bench player for LSU, but he's much better and much more skilled than I thought, and he's going to be a really fun one to watch next to Thomas. And the thing I think LSU really needed to do this year, they needed to add some size, they needed to add some defensive tenacity, some physicality, which I think you saw a little bit of last night. But the main thing they needed to add was from some perimeter shooters, and McKinnon can do that. They've got some really good, some really good sharpshooters. Rashad King, Markel Sutton, guys that they brought out of the portal. Ron Zipper is a young man they brought over from Israel, who I think is going to turn into a really good player. But they needed the guy to orchestrate all of it, and that's going to be Thomas this year. And I think he's going to be. This team's going to go as far as he can take them, I think.
So they've had Jalen Cook, right?
Yeah.
2 years ago.
Yeah, Jalen Cook 2 years ago.
And he was he had his moments, but he was kind of sporadic.
Yeah.
And he didn't play.
The efficiency wasn't always there. And I think the playmaking just wasn't always there either with a lot of these guys. And I think most of them were pretty solid basketball players at, the group of 5 level. But when you're at the SEC, you've got to have playmakers that can get everybody involved and not just yourself. And I think that's something that Thomas is really going to be able to do for this team.
Cam Carter last year certainly got his, but maybe didn't manage games very well at times.
Well, he's a scorer. I mean, he's a 2-guard. They were asking him a lot to play point last year, and he was more of a 2-guard. And so they didn't have much of a point guard last year either. So, I think Jordan Sears was about as close as they got, and he's more of a, create for myself kind of point guard. And so Thomas is really good. I think he's going to be a really fun player to watch. I think he could be a sneaky all-conference kind of point guard this year on one of the 3 teams. And, like I said, I think they go as far as he takes them.
Thought Sutton looked good too. Yeah, hit a 3, had an and 1. A slam in transition on an alley-oop. Like he kind of does a little bit of everything. He was like the player of the year in the conference he came from.
Omaha. He went to Omaha.
I don't know what conference that. Big Sky maybe or something.
I
don't know.
Remember.
But he's really good. And yeah, they spent millions of dollars on this roster. You know, the most that they have before.
Yeah.
And it was only one game, but it kind of looked like they invested in some good players there. So saw some things that certainly impressed. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else that really stuck out.
Rob Miller, I thought. He was the guy that was diving on the floor in the first half.
He slammed on a guy, and then the next possession, he's stealing the ball at the top of the key, getting on the floor, and then I think they call it a timeout.
They're really excited. Oh yeah, they're really excited about him. He was one of the youngest players in all of college basketball last year, and he really kind of came along towards the end of the season. And I think he's due for a big second year. Jalen Reed is another guy that they brought back. Those are the two returners. Reed is somebody that is coming off the ACL injury. Still looks like he's moving. He's trying to get used to the knee brace and trying to get back to where he was athletically a couple of years ago, or last year, I should say, before his injury. But he's somebody that I think LSU is really, really excited about too. Just getting him back in the program for a 4th year, and he's been here for every Matt McMahon experience. And so I think he's somebody that you definitely want to see have some success this year and try to make a postseason run.
Good to see him back and playing after that knee injury. Definitely was due for a good season this year. Who knows? Maybe they would have won a few more games if he was healthy and playing last year. So the men's basketball team 1-0 right now, and they got a bunch of cupcakes, shall we say. I don't know if there is a cupcake for this team necessarily yet, but they should run through the next stretch of games here. What you're really looking at, though, is early December, Texas Tech, SMU, DePaul, and then when they get into conference play to really, truly see how good this team is. So kind of wait and see on that. The women's team, you cover the women's team a little bit?
I can't say that I know the women's team in and out the way that I do the men.
You go to the games?
I haven't been to a whole ton of them, but it's something that I definitely want to try to get into a little bit more. But I've been stretched a little thin here.
Yeah, well, you're only one person.
I do basketball, I do baseball, I do recruiting, I do football. That keeps me plenty busy.
Oh, yeah.
That's where I'm at.
Well, I mean, you got the men's. I think the women played Tuesday, the men Wednesday, and then the women are playing again tonight as we're recording this on Thursday against Southeastern. So it's just like it's hard,
It's a revolving cycle. Football bleeds into basketball, basketball bleeds into baseball, and then recruiting is a whole year-long adventure. So our saying in the recruiting world is we sleep in July, and that's really
or never.
Yeah, I guess never, but that 2 to 3 weeks in July there are always pretty fun.
Well, that's the hard part about this job is to kind of take a break, because you could realistically be working on something every single day. There's always things to talk about.
And this beat never disappoints, as we're starting to learn. And I'm sure you've learned here over your first couple of years in Baton Rouge. It never disappoints.
No, never disappoints, never stops either. So, but the women did want to mention them. They are also 1-0. They blew out Houston Christian. They got Southeastern, as I mentioned. And they should have a good team again. And it's Kim Mulkey running the ship. So
absolutely. I think they're top 5 going into the year. They're going to run through a lot of their non-conference. And I think the one thing, as I have picked up on, is the size. They have a lot of talented guards, a lot of talented wings. Kovac, I believe, is their tallest player, and she's about 6'4", 6'5".
She's tall. Huge.
Yeah.
Her thighs are massive. It's crazy. She's big.
Yeah.
She can be a massive.
So that's my only question, I guess, going into when you get into SEC play, when you're playing a lot of these elite big teams in the conference. But no, I'm excited to watch them too.
Full Wiley looked good. Malaysia Full Wiley, the transfer from South Carolina, she came in off the bench, got a loud cheer, and was doing no look passes and everything. She got some playmaking ability. Yeah. So I think she'll be a fan favorite.
Yeah, I do too.
Not just because she was a former Gamecock either.
Yeah, and last year it was the last year for Flaugier, so I'm sure they're going to try to do a big send-off for her. And Michaela is now in her 3rd year, and those are the 3 that I think you look at: Full Wiley,
for sure,
Williams, and Flaugier. How far that team goes is how far they take them.
They look good. So that's hoops, and we'll finish out with a little baseball.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love baseball. We could have stood here and talked for an hour about baseball, and I would have been perfectly happy. But
probably could have spent an hour on all 3.
Yeah.
But can't do that. Things to do, right?
Yes, sir.
You never know what's going to happen over the course of 3 hours here. Anyway, recently, right?
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
Who knows?
That's true. I open my phone here and I miss a bunch of phone calls about what's going on with the football team, I guess. But no, I'm excited about this baseball team. I know you were in Biloxi this last weekend. I think just the big question I have is just going to be about the development of this sophomore pitching class. The Evans and Schmidt and Cooper Williams. I think all those guys have chances to be pretty good players and starters on this team. And I think the infield is the other big question mark you look at. I think it's been interesting watching some of these fall ball games, and I'm not sure, you can maybe dive into this a little bit more, but Braden Simpson seems to be a pretty big fixture at first base. And, I hope I'm not off base there, but in all the fall games that I've been at this year, he's been out there at first with Zach York. It's been a lot of rotating in at third base, but Trent Caraway seems to be a pretty big popular guy at third. You got Milam at short, of course, and then Tanner Reeves, Seth Dardar. Those guys are kind of mixing in at second. So it seems a little bit more open in the air for infield, but they have a lot of talent. And from what I saw from your clips, they got some juice now too. Like the hitters are big time.
That stuck out to me. I asked Coach afterwards, "Do you think they'll have more power this year?" He's like, "Yeah, I get asked that every year." But I went to that thing last season and they didn't hit a single home run, at least that I saw. They may have in like the late game or something when I wasn't watching, but I think they had 6 home runs over the course of the 3 games, and had a couple doubles mixed in there as well. To your point, kind of like last year, I think there's so many good players and not enough places to play. Exactly. Like they've tried to put Simpson out at left field, third, second, first. This might be a case this year where we see a lot of different lineups. You got Zach York trying to get some time, Dardar, and these guys all got some pop. Like these are bats you want in the lineup. But it's kind of like Dalton Beck last year and Tanner Reeves last year. They were kind of the odd guys out. They just couldn't fit them in as everyday players. So I think they're trying guys out at different spots and seeing what sticks. And
Harden's another guy that's kind of come along here recently.
Daniel Harden, yes. He's outfield.
He's interesting, but he's somebody I could see slipping into like a DH role or something. He's got a lot of speed around the bags, and I'm excited to see him. I'm excited to see, I think a fan favorite is going to be Zach York next year for sure. The catcher battle too, like the Cerna and Aaron Beatty are going to be the 2 guys I think you see at catcher. Aaron Beatty seems to be really developing, not only just on the field, but off the field. He seems like a very mature kid, very, very fun, very nice guy to talk to. And I'm excited to see how those guys, kind of go back and forth, because the one thing about Jay, and last year was really the first year where he just had like a singular catcher doing a majority of the work. And I'm not sure that's something he really wants to lean into a whole bunch of the time. I think he'd love for Omar Cerna to be a really impactful player right from the start and be able to spell Aaron Beatty every once in a while. So I'm excited to see how that little competition goes too throughout the rest of the fall and into spring.
Yeah, those 2 are good friends too, from what I understand. Yeah. They played with each other growing up and stuff. I think last year they had to do what they did with Luis out of necessity. Like Cade wasn't ready, I don't think, to take on that big workload as a freshman. Blaze Priester, I guess, just wasn't cut out to be a big contributor.
They tried him. Yeah. I mean, they gave him his opportunities in the fall and into the spring, and I think just Hernandez was the most consistent guy, and you saw that all the way up to the run to Omaha. I mean, you're not winning the national championship, or at least you're not making it easier for yourself to win the national championship without Hernandez's hit there against Arkansas that kind of opened the game up a little bit and got him in position to win the game in the 9th inning of that one. So yeah.
But I think Cade learned from Luis and Coach Jordan last year, and I think he's ready for that uptick in innings, and I think he is going to be the first guy for sure. But Cerna's got a bat that I think you got to keep in the lineup. He hit a 2-run homer in the scrimmage, the exhibition, and he's had a lot of good moments in the scrimmage as well. He's still kind of working on blocking pitches and pass balls and things like that, and handling the ball when he's popping up and throwing to second, just little things. But I think that his bat plays, and I think, to your point, we will see a little bit more diversity there behind the plate. One other thing is, I've been seeing Cade at first a little bit. I think you probably have too. And I'm like, all right, I mean, they're not going to do that, right? But I asked him after the exhibition, and he said, no, that's a real possibility that they might put Cerna there. They might put Cade there, because I don't think they want Cade catching every single game,
Way to keep him in the lineup. Mm-hmm. That's a great point. And I think it just, all these different scenarios we're talking about just points to the fact that I think Jay Johnson has really leaned into that thing that he told us a lot last year, which is like, the first couple of seasons he would, drive himself crazy writing out different lineup combinations and different things. And I think these last couple of years, he hasn't done that a whole ton. Like, they're trying a whole bunch of different stuff, but they're not, he's not just obsessing over it to the degree that maybe he was the first few years. At least that's what I picked up on when he's talked about that kind of stuff. But, outfield seems settled. I'm very curious about this pitching staff though, because they have so many guys. I mean, so many guys. We talked a lot last year about the depth that we thought this team had, and there were some guys that maybe didn't perform to the degree that LSU needed him to, and so they really settled in on that, Anderson, Ianson, Evans, and then towards the end there, Chase Shores really came along for him. But I think this team has a lot of really good pitchers on it, and it's going to be really interesting to see how those opportunities are dispersed in the fall, and we're starting to see that a little bit here. But just with Kaysen, I mean, like, you think he's ready for that Friday spot? I think he's going to be.
I don't
awesome.
see any reason why not. Yeah. Haven't seen him a ton. He's only thrown an inning the past couple weeks. Like they're ramping him up really slow. Right. Like they want to be very careful with him. I think he didn't throw it all over the summer either, at least competitively. But I think so. Yeah. I mean, if last year was any indication, man, I mean, what he did against Little Rock in that regional final, and the start he had against Tennessee. Many times throughout the season. He just came in and, had his freshman moments too, but for the most part, he would come in and dominate. So I don't see any reason why he can't make a big jump. I mean, think about Cade Anderson. Like, Cade was a midweek guy that was a little bit better as the season went along. He threw pretty well in Hoover, but I think that was about the last time we saw him was in Hoover. Maybe he was out a little bit in Chapel Hill.
He played a little bit in Chapel Hill.
But it wasn't much.
Yeah,
right?
It was like an out or two here and there just to get them through an inning, I think, was his big role in that regional. But, I agree completely. And I think another guy that I'm really – you hope takes that next step is William Schmidt.
Yeah.
Like I think the talent's there. I think he's going to be, a really special player, whether he figures it out over the next couple of years here or if it happens in the pros. But he's somebody that I think, if they see the kind of jump from year one to year two, I'm not saying he has to take a Cade Anderson jump, but if he makes a sizable jump, that I think changes the entire complexion of their season and this whole team.
I think so too, because then you have Evans and then you have Schmidt. I don't know who the other starter is going to be. Right now, they've been throwing Schmidt on Sundays, just like they did with Shores last year. He would go out there every fall ball Sunday in preseason, and then he ended up being the Sunday guy for a little while. I think that's Schmidt's trajectory right now. I haven't been to a lot of Fridays because high school football is about the same time.
Cooper Williams has been a popular guy on Friday.
Yep.
He's looked really good, really sharp.
Cooper Moore from Tennessee was great in Biloxi.
He's going to be somebody to watch for sure. And I was told a lot about this Danny Lockenmeyer guy in the offseason. I think they really like him. I'm not sure what his role is going to look like on this roster, but he's a really interesting left-handed pitcher that I'm excited to see develop here.
You'll probably want a lefty in the starting rotation. You don't necessarily need to have one.
Yeah.
But it's nice to have that diversity.
Yeah, Williams would be my lean, I guess, from a lefty perspective. I think he's somebody that they're really going to look hard at because he was another one of those freshmen that, they had a lot of those guys contribute last year. I mean, even more so than I think their 23 team. I mean, you had Evans pitching big moments, Williams pitching big moments. He obviously had Curiel out there in the outfield doing some really big things. And so I think this sophomore group and the lessons they learned from their freshman year is going to really pay great dividends for this team. And I think that core group of sophomores is going to be a big bright spot for this group.
Yeah, Mav Rizzi's a part of that.
Yeah, Mav Rizzi for sure.
Zach Cowan's competing for a starting job. I think that's a big reason why he came back. Marcos Paz, they're excited about him.
He was pumping 98, 99 in a fall game a couple weeks ago when I went, and he's very interesting. Yes.
So to your point, I mean, Santi Garcia, he threw very well on Sunday, and Coach Johnson said that if he can get to a specific level, like he changes the team, kind of like you said with Jacob Myers last year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of guys. It's still very raw. There's still a lot to be figured out here, but the one thing that sticks out to me is how close this team is again, and they even say it themselves, and I don't feel like they're BSing either. It's just how close they are and how quickly they've meshed. I interviewed Simpson, and he was like, I was kind of worried about how it would fit in here and if it would be a good vibe and all that, but he was like, no, it hadn't been a problem at all. In fact, it's been great,
It's the culture. I think Jay has done just a phenomenal job of building, and of course some of that comes with winning, it comes with success and building the team out the way that you need to. But it's a program that's recruiting itself right now, and that is the best place to be if you're LSU baseball and if you're an LSU baseball fan, because Jay Johnson is a relentless worker, and he's somebody that spends hours, pretty much all hours of the day, worrying about how he can get the most out of his team for that particular day. And Grand Slam. He's been a Grand Slam hire ever since he got here, and it's been a lot of fun getting to know him a little bit too. As you know, both you and I have, and a bunch of the media guys have. He's a really, really, really focused individual, but he's also just a great dude to be around.
Yeah, I think so too. So they've been through this once, coming out of 23, going into 24, and didn't do great, but still almost. I mean, we're pretty darn close to making something happen there late in the season there.
You're 1 out or 2 outs away, right? And
from having the Supers,
and like the whole roster turnover too from those 1 to 2 years, like that's so hard to get back to that place. You know, when you have so many guys in 23 that go on to play professional ball, to just turn it around the next year, and I think to still be a playoff team and a postseason team is an admirable thing. And you know, especially now with this group, I think. They don't have that. Like they have enough of a returning core here to where they can really build up on what they did last year.
Yeah, you got a good foundation, and I think
Absolutely.
they brought in some good pieces like they did last year, and they've recruited some good pieces.
Yep,
so
absolutely.
I think they're in a good spot. I think they're well positioned. I don't know if they're going to win the national championship. I think it's too early to determine that. But I feel like if nothing else, they're going to be a really solid product at bare minimum.
If you're hosting baseball in June and at LSU, you're in a really good spot. And I think this team has that opportunity ahead of them, and we'll see how it all evolves here over the next several months. But I'm excited about this group again.
Me too. Yeah, it's fun to go and watch, on Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays. So that's a little bit of a teaser into baseball. We'll have a lot more on that, but it's still November and still 99, I think, days away now from opening pitch against Milwaukee. So we'll get more into that as we get closer. That's just a little bit to get you introduced to what's going on there. So, all right, I think we've touched up on everything for now.
I hope so. I hope we haven't missed anything. But no, I appreciate you having me on, man. It's been a lot of fun. And
Thanks for coming in.
Yes,
yeah, would love to. Glen West, give him a follow. So your handle is
it's at Glen West 21, but my little profile underneath the handle is just your average 6'10" guy. So I won't stand up for you guys though, because my head and shoulders will be chopped off from the camera.
Not mine.
I didn't want to say anything, man.
That's okay. I mean, it's fine. I usually don't get. I don't look short.
Look, there's a lot of downsides to being this height too. I'll just say I'll leave it at that.
Right, like slamming your head on the
exactly. You got to duck everywhere. You just got to be aware of your surroundings everywhere when you're this height. So,
are you taller than Shaq?
No, okay. I hope not. I mean, Shaq's 7'1", and Shaq's just a Goliath human being too. I mean, he's
What's he called, the Diesel now or something?
He's the Diesel. He was always the Diesel, but
his DJ name.
Yeah, we're in Shaq-a-Claus season now. He used to call himself Shaq-a-Claus.
Oh, okay.
Christmas time. So, we'll see.
All right.
I don't know about that one, but
yeah, I guess it works. You know, he gave us a gift recently. He gave Jacques some of those Shaq gummies.
Yeah, there you go.
So
I had tried one of those. Those were actually pretty good. Yeah, they're pretty good.
All right. Yeah. Maybe he'll sponsor.
Good plug.
Show.
Good plug, Shaq.
That's not gonna happen.
There you go.
All right. We'll give Glenn a follow. Check out Go 24/7. Great coverage all year long and the big LSU sports recruiting, all that. And we'll catch you next time on Game Time with John Eads. Thanks so much for tuning in, and have a great rest of your day.